which leads me to another thing. We've heard the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. You know what I say? I say an apple a day and the doctor you will pay, all right? So you need to be avoiding fruit and all these other things that we deem are good for us. So we just learned that glucose and fructose, fact, this is a fact, okay? This is not my opinion. Excuse me, this is not something that I dreamed up last night. This is not something that I came to the conclusion on my own, okay? I'm not that smart, okay? I am basing what I'm telling you on my undergraduate training, which wasn't really taught to me all that well because it was segmented, remember, okay? I'm basing on my clinical experience, and I have to be honest with you. After I lost weight, significant amounts of weight, 80 pounds, doing what I was told not to do, by the way, my HDL normalized, my blood pressure normalized, of course I came off medications, I was doing what was seen as alternative, I can't even say alternative, I'm just going to say downright wrong. It was at that point that I went back to my biochemistry, organic chemistry, physiology textbooks. Now that's a stack of books this high, because I reordered all the latest versions. And I reread them. I reread all these textbooks, and I learned where I went wrong. I learned that glucose and fructose give rise to plaque-forming deadly cholesterol, that they make us fat, they don't make us thin. What's the current recommendations right now for especially childhood obesity and adult obesity as well? You know, get them off the cakes and candies. I agree. But then they say, replace it with healthy snacks. Have some grapes and raisins and whole wheat stuff. Really? Well, when you say that, you're not understanding that glucose is glucose is glucose, that sugar is sugar is sugar. And let's see, I'm actually going to take, I just have an email at my Dr. Jim at drjamescarlson.com. So let me take an email from a viewer, and thank you so much for sending this. This is from a Keith, Long Island, New York, it looks like. And it says, "Hi, Dr. Jim. I've been reading the first 10 chapters of your book on your website, and I find it fascinating and intend to order a digital copy from you soon." You can get a digital copy online. That's not important. You'll see that when you go to the website. He states that I've done an excellent job explaining how carbs lead to the accumulation of excess body fat, which is interesting because this is just what I was talking about. But I am wondering how one can then shed this excess body fat once it is in place. Great question. I understand that low-carb eating will prevent me from gaining any further body fat, but will it also allow me to shed the fat I already have? And if so, what is the mechanism that allows this? Best regards, Keith. I'll leave his last name off. Keith, great question. It was basically a subcategory of questions. The first thing is, yes, over-consuming fructose and glucose in their many disguises, I call them the sheep's and wolf's clothing, will cause extra accumulation of fat. But it's interesting that once you back off on the carbs and start eating more cholesterol, fat, and protein, that the body will dip into this what I'll call physiological reserve, and you'll shed the excess body fat like you're sweating it off. So, sure you can exercise. I mentioned earlier that was dietary myth number 4, that we don't need to exercise to lose weight. You can exercise. If you're obese or morbidly obese, I would recommend aquatherapy, hydrotherapy. What I do know is that a lot of the hotels in the area, especially if you live in a temperate climate like myself, in the winter months, you're not going to be out in your pool, okay? So a lot of the hotels in the area will allow you for a small fee to use their indoor pool. So that would be a great exercise. But you don't need to exercise to lose weight. Keith's question centers around, well, how can I lose weight? Once that fat's in place, once it's there, how does it come off? Well, it comes off naturally when you start, decreasing the amount of carbs that you consume. Now, I'm advocating low carb, more fat, more cholesterol, more protein, but really what I should be saying is low carb, appropriate amounts of fat, appropriate amounts of cholesterol, appropriate amounts of protein. Once you back off on the carbs, the body has no choice but to use the stored excess fat as I don't really want to use the word fuel, because that goes back to the whole calorie combustion thing. And it's interesting that a lot of the terminologies we use for exercise and diet are combustion terms, like we got to burn this and fuel that. Well, what actually happens is the heart, known as the myocardium, and the skeletal muscle prefer free fatty acids for fuel. Okay, see, I did it. I said fuel, so shame on me. Prefer free fatty acids for the production of something called ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is really what gives us energy, okay? So when you're breaking down fat, all right, let me just say this, Keith, when you're breaking down the fat, or you will break down the fat, because now you're not getting an overabundance of carbohydrates, because carbohydrates can produce ATP, which is what we need to move ourselves, our bodies. But you get more bang for your buck with the triglycerides or fats. They are a storage of ATP. I'm trying to avoid the use of energy, but I guess I can use that term. Let's put it in perspective. When you, I don't want to say burn, but when you utilize a gram of glucose, you're getting 36 ATP or energy molecules. When you utilize a free fatty acid for energy, you're getting 108 of these ATP energy units. So that's a lot more. Simple math, about 6 times, 5 or 6 times more. So you get 5 to 6 times more of the energy when you utilize free fatty acid for fuel than if you utilize glucose for fuel. Most people out there will maybe know, maybe not know, that glycogen is a stored sugar. It's found in the muscles and the liver. Glycogen stores are for short-term use only. If you're exercising, weightlifting, marathon running, you'll burn up your say I use the word burn, you'll utilize your glycogen stores in about 15 minutes. Now, we all know that most of us can exercise longer than 15 minutes. Why? Because now we're utilizing free fatty acids for fuel, excuse me, free fatty acids for fuel, where you get more bang for your buck. You know, if any of us have ever ran a marathon, you get the so-called second wind. That second wind is when we're converting from the use of glycogen into the use of free fatty acids for fuel. Now, different enzymes are used for to utilize free fatty acids for the production of ATP, which is why when you back off on your carbs, there's a 2-week or 3 weeks, sometimes a month period where you feel weaker. All right, you go through actual withdrawal from carbs. Once you start once you start converting to the use of free fatty acids for fuel, now you get more energy, you get more bang for your buck, and your body's a lot happier and can function a lot better. So what happens to the stored fat once it's already there? And answer to Keith's question, and I believe I've already answered it, is it's used naturally. The body is no longer getting an overabundance of sugar, that's glucose or fructose, and the stored fat that's there is utilized for the production of the energy molecules ATP. Great question. Okay, now I'm looking at another question, all right, from, actually it's from Dayton, Ohio, who picked on the whole wheat bread, okay? This is Lucy from Dayton, Ohio, she heard me say, whole wheat bread, white bread, so she's wondering why I'm picking on whole wheat bread. Why whole wheat bread? Remember, sugar is sugar is sugar. So it doesn't matter where the sugar molecule comes from, it's still sugar. And think of it this way. You're a cell, right? Our cells, the cells in our body don't have brains. They're not cognitively aware. When a sugar molecule gets to the level of the cell has no idea where that sugar molecule came from, right? Because I drew up here 3 glucose molecules which all look the same. So when any one of those glucose molecules gets to the level of the cell doesn't know where that glucose molecule came from. It doesn't say, oh, glucose molecule, you came from whole wheat bread, so come on in, I'll do good things with you. Or you came from a Snickers bar, I'm going to do bad things with you.